Hello everyone. Croeso noswaith da, and welcome to our results sharing event. I'm just going to share my screen. And can we see that okay, Sue?
Yeah, that's good, Harriet.
Okay, brilliant. So a few bits of housekeeping before we start. So this meeting is being recorded, and we'll be able to share that online with everyone afterwards. I think most of your cameras are probably off, but if you don't want to be recorded, please feel free to turn off your camera. You also should all be on mute for the duration of the presentation, and at the end there'll be an opportunity for you to ask any questions. If you have questions as we're going through the presentation, there's a Q&A button at the top of your screen. So just click on that and you can type any questions you have in there as we're going along. And then, yeah, our presentation is in English only, but we do have some Welsh speakers on the team. So if you want to ask any questions in Welsh, please feel free to do that. And so we're going to run through a recap of the project, what our aims were with the project, and then we're going to look at some reasons for poor river health, and then we'll look at the results of your testing and what the next steps are. And at the end, like I said, we'll have some time for Q&A. So we'll hand over to Sue.
Croeso, welcome. Diolch, thank you everybody for joining us tonight. Really appreciate you taking part in this project, but also coming on board now to help share in our results. So just to introduce you to who's going to be speaking today. So I'm Sue Burton and I'm based down in Pembrokeshire. I'm the Pembrokeshire Marine Special Area Conservation Officer. We also have Alison Hargrave, who is the Penyclin a Sanau SAC officer. Both Alison and I are area based, and we work on behalf of local partnerships of organisations with marine responsibilities. So I think somebody's got some feedback. Thank you. You can just make sure you're on mute. Thanks very much. So both Alison and I work on behalf of local partnerships who have marine responsibilities or powers within our areas. So we undertake joint work with other similar officers in Wales. I think we have both Katie from the Severn online, and we've got Melanie from Cardigan online with us now. And we also link very closely with Natural Resources Wales. Alison and I are both seconded to the Marine Conservation Society for a project that I'll explain in a minute. We also liaise with colleagues in the rest of the UK and further afield, depending on the varied projects that we're working on. This water quality project wouldn't have been possible without the subcontracted help from West Wales Rivers Trust. We've got Harriet with us tonight. Thank you very much, Harriet, for hosting this webinar for us as well. Really grateful for that. And Earthwatch. So we have Caroline from Earthwatch with us tonight as well. So both West Wales Rivers Trust and Earthwatch will be preparing area-specific reports to summarise and discuss the results. I will be running through the introduction to the work. Harriet will recap on river health. Caroline will present the results, and then Alison will outline the next steps and wrap up for us. Okay, thanks, Harriet. Next slide. So this water quality project is actually a national one. We have participants online, I think, from all over the coast of Wales. The reason for these two maps will be clear shortly. I'll explain. So behind this citizen science work, we've got two projects separately funded. They've been designed to dovetail together and run at the same time. Our work areas include working from sort of north to south, Ynys Môn, Penyclin a Sanau. Then if you look on the map on the left, we've got Cardigan Bay, Special Area Conservation, the whole of Pembrokeshire, including the Pembrokeshire Marine Special Area Conservation, Carmarthen Bay and Estuaries, Special Area Conservation, and then the Welsh half of the Severn Estuary, Special Area Conservation. So we're including, a lot of the coast there, but we are focusing on the marine environment. But just to sort of note that all the water quality testing was of freshwater inputs adjacent to and leading to the sea. Thanks, Harriet. So first project sort of behind this work that I'll explain is where Alison and I are joined by 3 others. So we've got Melanie from Cardigan Bay, SAC, Judith from Carmarthen Bay and Estuaries, and Katie from the Severn. So we all work for our own local partnerships, and collectively we form a national partnership, which is the Welsh Partnership of MPAs. MPAs are marine protected areas. It's a very useful umbrella term for the multitude of different marine conservation designations that exist and also confuse. Our joint work to improve the marine environment focuses largely on our common issues, such as water quality. We're working to improve the marine environment, but that's very difficult because it is very much out of sight, out of mind for a lot of people. So collaboration is absolutely essential. We work very closely with our local communities and stakeholders and dedicated volunteers like yourselves to help to bring about positive change. Next slide, thank you. So our project, Improving MPAs, is funded by the National Lottery Heritage Fund and Welsh Government, and we're very grateful to them to fund our current work through the Nature Networks Fund. As well as this water quality, we also have work streams on otters, litter, and reducing marine mammal disturbance. We're also looking to update our site management documents, and we take every opportunity that we can to raise awareness of Wales's incredible marine life. Next slide, please. The other project that's behind this water quality work is the fantastic Natur Enbith. Maybe we can post. We could put a link to this in the chat. So we'll have some links throughout this presentation, and we'll put some links in the chat function for you to sort of take a look at. So yeah, I absolutely encourage you to look up Natur Enbith. It's fantastic. It's a national species restoration programme led by NRW, and it involves a partnership of 10 different organisations. So yeah, please follow the link in the chat to find out more. There's everything from gorgeous rainbow beetle to bats to bees and butterflies and birds, loads there. Natur Enbith is also funded by the National Lottery Heritage Fund with support from Welsh Government. It's not just about restoring species, but it's also very much about how people can work with nature and benefit themselves as well as the wildlife. And volunteering is a great way to achieve this. Next slide, please. So one of Natur Enbith's partners is the Marine Conservation Society. The Natur Enbith Moor is focused in the 2 areas on the map there in the north and around Pembrokeshire. So our species include seagrass. Most of the focus of that is in the north, and we're looking at protecting seagrass from the impacts of moorings by installing systems that reduce impacts to the seabed. We have native oysters, and the focus for that is in the Milford Haven Waterway in Pembrokeshire, where we're introducing more oysters to create broodstock areas to help them to reproduce and build up their numbers, as well as monitoring them and to help us increase our knowledge of the issues that they're facing. One interesting fact about oysters is that each one can filter and clean up to 200 litres of water a day. So more oysters can really help with poor water quality. We also have the beautiful pink sea fan. Their current northern limit is in North Pembrokeshire. They're very slow growing, beautiful warm water species. Involving them in Natur Enbith really helps to showcase our marine life, as well as open up conversations around climate change and marine knowledge. But in addition to the focus on the species, we really felt that it was very important to include water quality as a theme. Water quality affects so many species and environments, from marine through freshwater and terrestrial. So we really felt it was a brilliant connector, and because it impacts so much of the marine environment, we were really keen to include it. So we're pleased that it's included in Nature in Bith. So Alison and I sort of cover the work between us, as well as working with our marine conservation colleagues. And yes, so Alison covers up the north and I cover down in Pembrokeshire. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the overall aim of this work that you've all been helping us with is to basically fill gaps in knowledge and help to build up an evidence base to help marine management ultimately. So the impact of water quality on the marine environment. So behind me and on the screen here now on this slide, what you can see is algal mats. So it's an indication of where there's too much of a good thing. So too many nutrients going into the water creates these algal mats that, when you look at the mud flats, which should be brown, they're basically where there's elevated levels of these nutrients. It's just green, and this thick felt-like substance covers the mud flats. It can stop birds from feeding. It's smothering all the sort of the other species on the shore. And when it breaks down, the bacteria that break it down basically use up all of the oxygen in the water, and that means that all the other species are impacted, and it can kill fish and other marine wildlife. So we do not want too much of those nutrients coming into the water. Other threats to our water quality can include other pollutants, plastics, microplastics, sediment runoff to smother as well. So it's really important for us to have got more information around the coast, and thank you very much for helping to gather that as part of this project. Thank you very much.
So yeah, as Sue touched on, those extra nutrients that are causing the algal mats in the marine waterways, those nutrients are coming from somewhere, and so we're looking at river health and those issues that are contributing to poor water quality across Wales that are then impacting those marine environments. So agriculture is a big problem for rivers and water quality. 90% of the land in Wales is used for agricultural purposes. So it makes sense that this sector has a fair impact on river health. And one of the practices that causes problems is the spreading of slurry. So applying slurry to land that is already perhaps oversaturated, or just before a period of heavy rain or during heavy rain. This can lead to slurry runoff into nearby waterways, which you can see on the left there, that kind of foamy brown water, which would also smell quite strongly. Welsh Government did implement new regulations this year, meaning that farmers were unable to spread slurry between mid-October and mid-January. So this did give rivers a bit of a break for a few months, but now, farmers have a lot of slurry built up. They need to get rid of it. And so we might see increased incidences of farmers spreading slurry in inappropriate conditions, and might see more pollution events resulting from that. Another problem with slurry is aging infrastructure to contain the slurry. So occasionally we see slurry lagoons bursting, which releases a huge amount of slurry into the local environment, and can cause fish kills and real problems for the ecosystem. Another problem is spreading of chemicals, so herbicides, pesticides, and inorganic fertilizers. These can also wash off the land into nearby streams and rivers, especially when they're applied excessively, or again onto oversaturated land, or in fields where there's no buffer strip of plants to absorb those nutrients before they run off into the waterways. And then the photo bottom right shows an example of topsoil running off of an arable field when there was no cover crop planted. And then during a period of heavy rain, all that topsoil washed off, and then that will find its way down into a nearby stream. And this is obviously a huge loss to the farmer. That topsoil is very, very important for growing crops. And then also the sediment carries all those extra nutrients off into the local waterways, causing that pollution. Another problem is poaching by livestock. So on the left there, you can see cattle with access to the river. And this means that, the cattle, when they break down the banks with their hooves and such, they are adding excess nutrients into the soil, into the rivers, sorry. And on the right there, you've got farmyard runoff, which is another big problem. So when rain falls on farmyard, we think of that as clean water. And then the dirty water on the farmyard is, the animal muck, any other, chemicals that might be on the farmyard. When you get the mixture of that clean and dirty water, it just increases the amount of slurry that needs to be spread on the land. And also, when you get the farmyard runoff like that, it often drains into a storm drain, which connects directly to the local waterway without being treated first. So that's adding nutrients into the waterway that way as well. Of course, we've got wastewater is a big problem. So in the UK, our sewage system often isn't up to scratch. So household and industrial chemicals can end up in waterways, leading to higher phosphate levels. And this is especially true in cases where household appliances aren't connected to the sewage system and wastewater flows directly into storm drains and into local waterways. So you can see an example of that in the photo on the left. Our monitoring didn't show widespread high levels of phosphates, but seasonal fluctuations in tourist numbers in Wales can lead to increased phosphates in the summer months. And then, if you're seeing drier weather, lower river flows, that can lead to a concentration of those phosphates and lead to algal blooms, which can result in those algal mats that Sue showed us in the marine environment. And then the photo on the right shows pollution below a wastewater treatment plant near Llandilo, and it's just an example of our sewage systems lacking capacity and spilling water, untreated water, into local rivers. And this also happens through combined sewage overflows. So across a lot of the UK, our sewage network is a combined system, meaning that our sewage water and surface water flow into the same pipe system before reaching water treatment plants. And then these systems can become overwhelmed in times of high rainfall, and water companies are then allowed to use the overflows to discharge untreated wastewater, including sewage, raw sewage, into rivers and the sea. Now, obviously, these are only meant to be used in extreme conditions, but in reality, these discharges are happening thousands of times a year across the country. So these two maps kind of show in more or less in real time what the status is of combined sewage overflows in Wales. So on the left, you've got the Dwyr Cymru map, which shows a larger number of the overflows and their status. And then the Surfers Against Sewage one on the right shows more of the coastal bathing water influences for the combined sewage overflows. There's a couple of inland spots there too. So both of those are available online. I think we're going to share some links for those in the chat. And you can even get the Surfers Against Sewage one as an app on your phone. So if you are someone who uses local bathing waters, this can be a handy tool, and it can show you, after times of high rainfall, where it's best to avoid. Across Wales, the Rivers Trust are doing a good amount of work to try and mitigate these pollution influences. So with farmers, we do work to improve fencing and planting riparian buffer zones, which can, prevent livestock accessing the water and also absorbing nutrients before they do run off into the rivers. And we also have our umbrella body of Honest Cymru, who does advisory work with Welsh Government and works on proper management and regulation of water companies across Wales. So there is obviously a lot to be done in both of those areas, but we are working on them. And another source of pollution is kind of more urban pollution. So road runoff is a big problem. We see in this picture on the left the sediment running off into the local waterway there. Roads are obviously designed to drain freely so that you don't get that buildup of standing water, but that means that any contaminants on the road during rainfall are washed away into the closest stream. And there's no direct monitoring of this, so we don't know really the extent or the impact that that this runoff is having. But we do know that roads carry a lot of toxic pollutants like microplastics, metals, chemicals, and other particulates like grit and rubber and carbon. And all of these together can disrupt natural biological processes and deposit pollutants to riverbeds, which can really impact spawning migratory fish like salmon and trout. And then, the last source of pollution we're going to touch on is litter. So my co-worker there is pulling some trolleys out of a river, but we find all sorts of pollution, all sorts of litter amongst the usual, plastic bottles and crisp packets and the like. And yeah, we also see fly tipping and agricultural waste like silage wrap ending up in rivers, unfortunately. So what can you do? You can continue to report to NRW. So any pollution incidents that you see of your nearby waterways is really, really important. I think we're popping a link to that in the chat as well. So they have an online service and a phone line that's available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So yeah, the more we report, the bigger the evidence base is that there's pollution incidents happening. Regarding slurry spreading season, farmers are now allowed to spread slurry again. So don't report if you see it happening. If you see it happening in a rainstorm, that is not allowed. So you can report that. And if you see slurry, the farmer isn't spreading slurry at that moment, but you see it running down the road, for example, into a stream, that is a pollution incident. So you can report that if you see that happening. And just continue to monitor your local waterways and connect with your rivers trusts. And there'll be more on that at the end. Over to Caroline.
Thank you. So I want to take you through some of the results of what we found over the last couple of months of monitoring. So firstly, really impressive that over 400 sites were monitored across Wales with more than 300 people taking part in this monitoring. So it really is just an amazing scale of what you all achieved together. Unfortunately, we saw more than half of freshwater sites showing unacceptable levels of nitrates and phosphates, and we'll go into a bit more detail of this on the next couple of slides. So firstly, just a little overview for you of looking at what our data map of the amount of data we had ever collected in Freshwater Watch across Wales before this project and now after this project. So you can see that there was really some areas with such little data, and I think there was maybe 1 point on all of Anglesey before we did this project. And when you compare that to some of the data that we had across England, there was really a lack of data for Wales. So if you look at it now, there's really good coverage. Most places in Wales have at least had some monitoring. So it's really brilliant that we've picked up that data. So this is helpful. It's going to be helpful in this project locally, looking at the coastal regions of Wales, but it's also going to be helpful when we're looking at at a UK level, looking at the data and thinking about how we want to influence policy at that level as well. So thank you for contributing. This is an overview of all of the 6 areas and the levels at which we saw water quality at acceptable and unacceptable levels across the 2 months. So here we've defined acceptable as anything that was classed as good water quality, and unacceptable is anything that was classed as either moderate or poor. We've grouped them together into unacceptable. So you can see in most places it was either the same or slightly worse in December. So this is possibly due to the extremely wet weather that we did have during that period. There was a massive storm. If you remember, we delayed the sampling weekend by a week because of the wet weather. So that's likely to have washed quite a lot of things off the farms and off the land, off the roads, into the rivers. So we're seeing a general decline. Obviously, it would be interesting to compare this over more months than just 2. But that's the kind of initial things that we can see. And you can see a big difference there as well between the different regions. And what I've done on the next few slides is I've put them north to south because in my view there was a definite trend there. As you can see here on Anglesey, we had 38 sites. And the majority here was green, so really good water quality. And just at the bottom of these slides as well, I'll just say, for those of you who want the exact details, want a little reminder of them. So it defines for you what we're looking at. So when we say good, that's anything where nitrate was below 1 milligram per litre and phosphate below 0.1. Moderate is where nitrate is between 1 and 2 milligrams and phosphate between 0.1 and 0.2. And poor is where nitrate is over 2 milligrams per litre and /or phosphate over 0.2. So those are the definitions we're looking at here. So generally in Anglesey, we see most of that being green, which is really positive. Then if we move down to our next region of Gwynedd, you see again in the north, you see more of those good readings, and then around where we had some monitoring around Aberystwyth in the southern end, that's where we saw worse water quality. This is quite a big region, so it's worth bearing that in mind. There was over 50 sites monitored, but it is quite a large region, so they are quite spread out. And moving on then to Ceredigion, we see quite a range here, but this is tipping over, whereas more of the sites here are poor and moderate rather than good. So you can see little clusters there to see where, as you'd expect in the more urban areas, that's where we're seeing worse water quality. On the next one, we've got Pembrokeshire, which is absolutely fantastic coverage. So over 120 people looking at over 150 sites. So absolutely fantastic coverage across this whole region. We're seeing a fairly equal split between the 3 colours really on that pie chart, but quite a worrying amount of red coming up there. On Carmarthen, there is again quite a brilliant spread across the whole region, and you are seeing some little clusters here where there's worse water quality, and especially towards the southern end, that's where we're seeing more better water quality. And finally, looking at the Severn, so we had quite a localised region here that we were focusing on. So 39 sites, but in quite a condensed area. And we see quite a range in water quality here. Interestingly, we were specifically looking in the Severn above and below the Gwent levels, and there definitely does seem to be a difference there with worse water quality below the Gwent levels than above. Another thing that we did as part of this study was we were comparing the Freshwater Watch methodology against some NRW lab testing that they do at the same time, and also some handheld meters were used to just compare different methods. We found that the nitrate ranges matched really well against the lab testing, there were some minor differences in around a quarter of tests. Phosphate was slightly less accurate, where the Freshwater Watch Citizen Science was a bit of an under-reading compared to the lab tests, but we would rather it was that way round, because then we're showing that Citizen Science doesn't give false positives. So we would generally, as kind of researchers, prefer Citizen Science to be slight under measurement, such that people can't criticize the data and say it's throwing up false positives. So it's slightly better that way around. And generally this gave reassurance that the method we used is a good, cost-effective way to identify pollution and be accurate against other testing. So that's just an initial view of the results. I'm sure you'll be interested in more detail. As Sue mentioned earlier, Harriet and I are working on detailed reports for each of the 6 areas. So those will be coming out over the next couple of months.
Thank you, Caroline. So I'm going to be taking us through some of the next steps, really. Where do we go from here? Next slide, please. So the first thing I wanted to really cover was the data. What are we doing with it? Where's it going? So Caroline has showed you some maps from the Freshwater Watch website. If you haven't had a chance to look at those maps yourselves, I really would encourage it. You get to see not just the results from your own group, but the global map as well. So you get to compare our results from measurements taken in Africa and Australia, and it's just really interesting to see how the different regions of the globe compare. I was really excited to see that difference in the maps for the Wales, the 2 Wales maps with the dots. I kind of feel like this is a bit of a pun now, that we've kind of put Wales on the map for Freshwater Watch with this project. So I'm really excited that, we've made a bit of a difference in terms of, having the Welsh coast kind of counted in that way on this system. What I would say is that this data set is an open source data set. So it's available for governments, politicians, businesses to use to help lobby for change. So that data is now going to be available in the long term, and hopefully we'll continue to add to it. What we will be doing locally as well is making that data available to local organisations to help prioritise local actions. So working with people like NRW and water companies to make sure that they're, number one, aware of the data and to demonstrate the value of it. And that's why we were comparing it against NRW testing, to try and kind of give it some standing with organisations that use this type of data. So as Caroline mentioned, we are also preparing reports for all those areas. So this is really important because it puts a bit of context behind that data. So each area will get its raw data plus a report summarising the methodology and the results. And again, we will be making sure that Welsh Government and NRW water companies, everyone we can think of, will get copies of the report to make sure that it's spread as far as possible. The other thing I wanted to mention quickly as well is, as SAC officers or MPA officers, so people like Sue and myself, what we do is we have to identify issues on sites, and then we develop projects to help mitigate against those issues. And then we have to look for grant funding. So what this type of data does, it allows us, it gives us data basically, and supporting evidence to go for funding. So number one, it gives us data to help us prioritise where to focus. I mean, the sites that we're working on are pretty big, so being able to actually focus in on the real problem areas is really, really important. And it also provides us that evidence and the baseline data in order to support funding bids. Again, really, really important and valuable. Next slide, please. I can't emphasise enough really how important raising awareness about water quality is, and it's important across the board. So raising awareness amongst local communities, businesses, all the way up to local and government levels. So your involvement and the reports that are going to be produced highlight the widespread threat there is to the marine environment from poor water quality across Wales. What's also interesting about this work is raising awareness of that link between land use and the marine water quality. Really, really important. And we do feel as well that involving local people who really know their sites in local environmental issues also helps to raise awareness and understanding of human impacts, and it provides a real impetus for environmental protection. It gives people a voice, and the more of us there are, hopefully the more will be heard. Next slide, please. I wanted to take a really brief moment to kind of cast our minds back. So I know a lot of you on the call will have been involved with this project. So this project was called SWEPT, and this took place in 2018, 2019. So SWEPT actually stands for Surveying the Welsh Environment for Pollution Threats. Actually, it was Sue Burton from Pembrokeshire that ran this project, and it took place, like I said, in 2018, 2019, and it did use the Freshwater Watch tubes to highlight nutrient pollution within the Milford Haven waterway down in Pembrokeshire. So what we actually did with this current project was that methodology worked. So essentially we replicated that and rolled it out across the other sites in Wales. But what's interesting about the Pembrokeshire site is that you have something to compare it to, because you actually underdid that same data collection back in 2018, 2019. So you'll see the two maps there. So you do have a bit of a comparison. What I would say is that, unfortunately, widespread pollution is still evident. We do know that there are things like slurry spreading and sewage. They're well-known problems. They're not quick fixes. Addressing these does take time. Changes to impacted groundwater, that is a slow thing to recover. What I would say is that we all have a part to play, from local communities, individuals, but also businesses, all the way up to policymakers. And again, I think the more data we have, the stronger our voice becomes when we're trying to persuade others. Next slide, please. So I wanted to also give you a bit of an idea of the sort of the types of projects that at site level that we actually do undertake. So this was a project called Tir Amor, which translates as Land and Sea. So this was funded through Welsh Government, their Sustainable Management Scheme funding, and it's an example of how water quality data basically was used as a catalyst to implement this landscape scale project within this Daron catchment. So Daron is the name of the river, and it took place on the very end of the Llyn Peninsula up in North Wales. So the beach Aberdaron, right at the southern point of this map at the catchment, actually lost its flag in 2019 because of bacterial contamination, and the catchment wasn't meeting good ecological status because of elevated phosphates. So we did two things as part of this project. So the first thing we did was we undertook a huge catchment walkover, 46 kilometres, and we walked kind of every square inch basically, surveying, identifying risk factors. So we were making notes of agricultural runoff, livestock poaching, all of the outfalls that we saw. We also made notes of litter incidents and things like that. The second thing that we did was we worked with NRW. So when we started the project, NRW had one sampling point on this catchment. So we worked with NRW, they were partners in the project, and they increased their sampling points from 1 to 7. But not only that, they actually increased their sampling to all year round rather than just in the bathing season. So that gave us a really good data set. And what we did then was we overlaid those two things. What that allowed us to do was to give us a very actually detailed view of where each of these pollution incidences were, what was causing them, and what the significance of it was. So this led to actions. So the first thing we did was we did provide the landowners with these results at workshop events, and we did have some significant funding to work with farmers to do something very similar to the Rivers Trust in terms of installing fencing, working with hardcoring and things like that. And then we also worked with caravan and campsite owners to try and improve their sewage infrastructure. So what I would say is that at the end of this project, so the water quality had improved. Yeah, and they did actually get their blue flag back as well. So I just wanted to give you an example of the type of work that having this sort of water quality data could potentially lead to, and why it's so important for us on site. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk really quickly about something everybody loves, evaluation. So you will be aware that we sent, so for those of you who took part in the volunteering, we did send evaluation surveys before you did your training. We also sent forms out after you completed your training and surveys as well. Ideally, what we wanted to know first and foremost is what difference it made to you. And essentially, how can we improve that experience? So we want to know what went well, we want to know what didn't go well, more importantly, how we can improve that and make sure that it's a really good experience for those taking part. But in addition, these evaluation forms, they really help us when we're developing funding bids for future work. So all of the work that we carry out on site, we have to go for grant funding in order to deliver. It's the way of it at the moment. So being able to demonstrate the value of these types of projects, they are really, really important. So this is why I stress so much. If you can please take 5 minutes to fill this in, we'd be really grateful. Because when we do go for funding, number one, we have to demonstrate value of the data collected. So that's fairly straightforward, but we also have to demonstrate the impact that it has on people. So I know that they're annoying to fill in, but yes, it really does help. So we have got them. You have had all of this in an email already, but just in case you've lost the email and it's useful, we've put them up on the screen again. The links are going to go in the chat as well. So you only have to fill in one survey. I know it looks like there's 4 on the screen. Please be assured it's only one survey. So we do have 2 versions of the survey. So it depends on which area you are in. That's the survey you'll need to fill out. So you can use these QR codes, take a picture of it on your phone, it'll take you straight to the survey. So if you were surveying on Anglesey, Gwynedd or in Pembrokeshire, scan the QR codes on the left, choose either Welsh or English. And then if you did take place in Cardigan Bay, Carmarthen Bay or the Severn Estuary, take a picture of the QR codes on the right-hand side of the screen. If you have any issues with these that you can't access them, please get in touch and more than happy to help you out. Like I said, all the links are now in the chat as well. You are more than welcome to fill them out during the rest of this presentation if you would like, or take 5 minutes after the session, that would be great. Next slide, please. So how can we continue? So technically this portion of the project comes to an end fairly soon, but we're really keen to carry on. And I think the setup has been set up in such a way that we can carry on fairly easily. So if you're interested to carry on, number one, you will remain in the water quality group that you're currently in on the app. So you can continue to use this to record your future results. You don't need to do anything differently. You just carry on as you are. If you do have spare tubes, please go out. You can go out whenever you like, really. If you've got multiple sets, maybe have a month between samples, that would be really good. If you do have spare tubes and you don't want to use them, we can arrange to collect them or have them posted back to us. That would be great. So we do have some budget to cover some additional tubes. So for those of you that would like to carry on a bit more of a longer term basis, please let us know if you haven't already. For those of you that have let us know, we have your name, so that's absolutely fine. You don't need to let us know again. And then we can get some tubes sent out to you. I also wanted to mention the Fresh Water Watch, Great UK Water Blitz. That's a bit of a mouthful. So this is an event that takes place every year and it takes place 25th to 28th of April of this year. So it's a real opportunity to put your skills to the test. It's using the exact same methodology that you've been trained up as. So nothing different. You just go out on those days, you register your interest, they'll send you the tubes and you go out on those days and we get a real good snapshot across the whole of the UK. The other option as well is you can get in touch with your local Rivers Trust as well. So there's plenty of volunteering opportunities locally with your Rivers Trust. So again, get in touch with your local group and check out what they have. Next slide, please. QR code for the UK Water Blitz. So feel free to snap that. There is a link in the chat as well. And we will send this out, so you will get a copy of the slides as well, so you don't need to frantically write everything down. Next slide, please. So aside from water quality surveys, there are lots of other volunteering opportunities as well, both with us at our site level, so with the MPAs, but also with the Marine Conservation Society. So things like beach cleans, litter surveys, things like dolphin watches, seaweed identification, wildlife. There's lots, a huge variety of things. What I also wanted to say was the Natur an Byth project. So there's a lot of volunteering opportunities throughout the Natur an Byth project as well. So our marine project is just one element of Natur an Byth. So there are lots of other projects, as Sue mentioned, butterflies, birds, bats, lots of different things that you can try out. And these projects are happening right across Wales. So just as a quick example, something came through today. So the Natur an Byth Pen Llyn and Ynys Môn project, led by RSPB, are looking for volunteers to take part in the annual Around Llyn Chuff Count on the 8th of March. So I will send those of you on our contact list an email about that and how to get involved. And I'll let you know about any other opportunities that arise. You can also check out Natur an Byth on Facebook as well. So events should be available on there. Next slide, please. So before we close, I'd just really like to open up the floor for any questions. So it's an opportunity, if you have any burning questions, please feel free to ask, and hopefully we'll do our best to answer them. There is a raise your hand function, so hopefully that'll work. So yeah, if anybody has any questions, feel free. Laura has been keeping an eye on the chat. I don't know if any questions, Laura, have come up in the chat.
There's one question in the Q&A section. So question is, have you any thoughts as to why the nutrients and phosphates test results are different in terms of NRW testing? And that was Bridget. So Bridget, if you're welcome to come off mute if you want to go into more detail.
I can take that one if you like. So we will go in. I mean, we've literally only just got the analysis back, so it's pretty sort of, you know, we haven't really had a chance to look at it properly, and it is only sort of 25 tests. But we will. The main difference, NRW is much. It's the statutory sort of test. It's very, very accurate. We're not expecting our tubes to be as accurate. You know, they're doing ranges after all. That we're not sort of specifically giving a finite figure. So there is going to be variation. But the reagent that's used in the tubes is different to what NRW uses as well. So I mean, I think just to keep it short for now, wait for the reports. Sorry, Bridget, but happy to chat more about that in the future.
Thank you, Sue. Thank you.
So we have a couple of hands up now as well. So Kim, you happy to come in to ask your question?
Yeah, a couple of very quick little questions actually. One, what's happening with the art project with the tubes? Do you know?
Yeah, so Lily is working frantically on her art project. I'm really excited by it actually. There seems to be quite a few different elements to it, which I will include in updates if you're on our contact list. Another reason to get on our contact list. I will send you an update about it. So she's still keen to get any spare tubes that you have. She's still keen to get those. So if you've not been able to hand them in, let us know and we'll arrange some postage to get those sent in. But it's due to be completed, I think it's by March, so it's not long to go now. She's also doing some like clay jugs. She's been doing some clay jugs with local schools and local community groups. Basically, that link with water quality and kind of having vessels to kind of carry water and the kind of the sacredness of water from one place to another. And she's working on like a stained glass window as well. Again, all to do with water quality. So it should be really interesting to see how all of these different elements kind of fuse together, I think.
And my second little question was, because it's something else I volunteer with, are you, with any of your rivers work, doing any work with beavers?
We touch on it. So, I mean, it's very close to my patch actually. So I'm involved in it in terms of I'm very interested in it. and I work very closely with the people involved in it. So it's a yes and no, really. Yeah, we try. I think the marine world, especially, it's quite a small world. So we do tend to work very closely together, and at least we know what everybody else is up to, generally speaking. I don't know if that answers your question, really.
Cool, thank you.
And then we've got another hand up, Paul.
Hello, yeah. Just a couple of quick questions. The Clean River project, which was on the River Nevern, did this sampling, pretty much copying what Sue did on the Cleddau. I just wonder if that's going to be taken into account. You know, it could feed into the data we've already got, similar to how you're doing the data and comparing it to Sue's original. So I'm just suggesting that maybe Clean needs looking at.
Hi, Paul. Yes, of course it will be. So in the Pembrokeshire report, we'll also be referring to the other work that's happened in the area. You know, we like to be quite joined up as much as we can, don't we, in Pembrokeshire? So yes, we'll mention the Nevern project and also the Cleddau project and all the work that they've been doing as well on the Cleddau. Yeah.
Brilliant. My second question, just to try and get a holistic approach on all this, we've got treated sewage being discharged into the sea constantly. There's a tap in these sewage works where you can take a sample. They're sampled 4 times a year by Dŵr Cymru, and they're tested for biological oxygen demand and sediment, and that's it. We really need to be testing these long sea outfalls to get a holistic approach to what's happening in our inshore waters. Yeah, I think there was some testing done in Cardiff by Cardiff University, and they got raised levels of cocaine in the rivers there when South Africa were playing Wales at rugby. But no, my point is that it's very easy to take a sample, and there's a huge amount of data that could be gained from it. Why aren't we doing it?
Yeah, Paul, I think yeah, it's easy enough to take a sample. It's not so easy to get it very accurately analysed, and it's kind of quite expensive. We have been looking into doing some bacterial tests. There's some cheaper sort of bacterial tests that you can do, and I know that the Cleddau project in Pembrokeshire are doing some of those. So it's something that we were wanting to consider. There's so much you can do, but unfortunately the analysis can be quite expensive. But we're hoping to sort of draw together all the information that we can get hold of, and you know, we can put things like this in recommendations, and that all helps us for looking at funding going forward, because we're not going to cure water quality. We certainly want to be able to build on this work and do more and more and more. It's really helped to raise awareness, this project, quite nationally. So anything we can do to build on it, you know, we're raring to go, basically.
I think what I would add to that as well is, number one, if you know of other areas, you know, projects that have taken place that we should be taking into account, please do let us know in case we don't know about it, and we can absolutely include it. The reports are being written as we speak, so there's plenty of time. Absolutely. And if you've got any recommendations as well, so ideas like that we should be including in our recommendations, now's the time. So yeah, please do let us know. Claire, you got your hand up?
Yes, hello, good evening. Thank you very much for the presentation. It's been very informative. I'm from the Carmarthen Save the Towie group, and we're analysing our data. Now, we've used a different system for collecting the phosphate and the nitrate scores, and I'm wondering if anybody knows how to convert from the hash tubes, which have little colour bars on them, with a test strip, to your system, because I see your system is kind of more universally used. So on our hash tubes, wait a sec, let me just pop to another thing. On the hash scale, it goes, so say for phosphate, it goes from 0, 5, 15, 30 to 50, which is obviously miles away from your 0.1 to whatever it is, to 1. And I can't find anybody that knows how to convert from the hash scale to your scale, so I can do a similar thing of poor, moderate and good.
Is
Does
that for you,
anybody-
Caroline?
We can
It's
correspond
not.
by email if that would be easier.
Yes, I'll put my email in the chat if you want to drop me a message, and I'll ask our science team to take a look at it for you. It's not a method that I'm familiar with. I'll just put
No,
my
it doesn't
email
seem
in the
that-
chat for you.
Excellent. No, it doesn't seem anybody else is very familiar with it either, which is actually a bit of a shame because we've got lots of lovely data, but I'm just not quite sure where to draw the line of this is great, this is okay, and this is not very great at all. So
Yeah,
that'd
it
be
is really
fantastic.
difficult with multiple methods, isn't it? That's why we've stuck with one method that we then use consistently, because then we can compare it. But yeah, I'll help, absolutely try to help you. Sue, did you want to
Brilliant.
add
Thank
to
you very
that?
just very quickly, I see there's other questions. Very quickly, Claire, it's something that's been discussed in the Nutrient Management Board Citizen Science Group. I know that your group is represented on there, and there's been lots of talk about, really technical stuff. So make sure that that's raised through that group as well, because I know there's lots of very expert people that can sort of maybe try and help you out there as well.
We've been in touch with them, but haven't had an answer yet. But I'm going
okay.
to trust Caroline.
Yeah, all right then.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Yeah, it'd be great if we could sort that out. That'd be excellent. Laura, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, just another one from the Q&A panel. Well, there's a few actually that are talking about, getting hands on tubes and how to carry on and stuff. So it might be worth just summarising that again before we leave for everyone who's maybe sent back their spare tubes and wants to get some more and things like that. So worth summarising that at the end. But the only other question I'm spotting at the moment is regarding marine litter, are balloons a problem? And if so, is MCS still running a balloon campaign?
I don't know if somebody from MCS wants to take this. Bridget?
Yeah, we, as people on the call may know, MCS runs its flagship Great British Beach Clean in September each year, and we collect what we find over a 100-metre stretch, weigh it, sort it. Balloons and balloon debris is certainly one of the areas that we look at. Like, there's a box to tick if we find it, and we have to count the number of pieces of plastic, etc., sticks, all those things. Whether it was a key issue for Wales this year, as far as I know, it wasn't, but I know that it's an ongoing issue. So, for instance, I know last year there was that there was a particular issue with cigarette butts in Wales, in North Wales particularly. Balloon litter has not crossed my radar as a key one this year, but we definitely find that kind of plastic waste, and so it is certainly around in the environment. Sorry, does that answer? I'm kind of slightly out of my comfort zone, because although I know of our Great British Beach Clean, I'm not actually on that part of the team.
Thanks, Bridget. Harriet, could you move the slide on, if that's okay? We've only got 2 minutes left. Just to sum up what Laura was saying, it was in the chat, a few people are asking about the tubes. Absolutely. Even if you've sent your tubes back in and you now want to take part, absolutely, let us know. So I know some people have already, so if you've already given us your name, you're on the list for getting more tubes. But yeah, absolutely, if you do want to carry on, let us know and we'll sort that out for you, no problem at all. I think the only thing that's left for me to do is to say thank you very, very much for taking part in this programme of work. We've enjoyed working with you, and I really hope it can continue. The fact that it's all set up to be able to continue is excellent. I have left all of the site officer email addresses on the screen. It's probably easier to take a picture. We could email them out to you, actually, that might be easier. So keep in touch. Let us know if you want to be added to contact lists if you're not already. Let us know about tubes. If you have any recommendations for reports, let us know. If you know of any other data that we should be taking into account for the reports, let us know. Other than that, unless anybody else on the team wants to add anything, I think we can say thank you very much and good night. Any other questions, feel free to email us. Thank you very much.